The Satanic versus Salman Rushdie published this novel blending magical realism, immigration, and dream sequences. One section fictionalized early Islamic history in ways many Muslims found profoundly blasphemous. The reaction was global and violent. India banned it within weeks. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt followed. Copies were publicly burned in Britain. Then, in 1989, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini issued a fatwa calling for Rushdie's execution. The fatwa was never formally lifted. The violence was real. In 1991, Hitoshi Igarashi, the book's Japanese translator, was stabbed to death in Tokyo. The Italian translator was stabbed and survived. The Norwegian publisher was shot and wounded. In 2022, more than 30 years later, Rushdie was attacked on stage in New York and lost the sight in one eye, and novel became a life-threatening object. It is still in print. The Anarchist Cookbook, William Powell, was 19 years old and furious about the Vietnam War when he wrote this. Published in 1971, it contained instructions related to explosives, weapons, drug production, and sabotage. Powell intended it as an act of counterculture defiance. He almost immediately regretted it. Britain restricted the book's sale. American schools challenged it repeatedly. It was referenced in public discourse around multiple violent incidents. But its most remarkable story is its author. Powell converted to Christianity, became an educator, and spent decades trying to get his own book taken out of print. His publisher refused. Powell died in 2016, still unable to suppress the book he had written 45 years earlier. A teenager's rebellion outlasted his regret, his faith, and his lifetime of objections. The Da Vinci Code Dan Brown's thriller follows a symbologist unraveling a conspiracy involving Jesus, Mary Magdalene, a secret bloodline, and centuries of suppression by the Catholic Church. Brown presented the claims as historically grounded. Historians and theologians disagreed vigorously. The Catholic Church condemned it. Lebanon banned it. India faced demands for a ban. Christian institutions across multiple countries formally objected. Protest campaigns and legal challenges appeared in several regions. None of it worked. The Da Vinci Code sold over 80 million copies and became a global film. The religious outrage, rather than discouraging readers, sent millions of them directly to bookshops. The more urgently authorities insisted people should not read it, the more people wanted to know why. Naked Lunch. William S. Burroughs wrote Naked Lunch in fragmented vignettes during years of heroin addiction. There is no conventional plot, only a hallucinatory underworld of drug use, grotesque imagery, and explicit content. American publishers refused it entirely. Paris-based Olympia Press published it first. When Gros Press brought it to the United States, it was banned in Boston and challenged in Los Angeles. The 1965 Boston obscenity trial brought in testimony from Norman Mailer and Allen Ginsberg, who argued the book had serious artistic merit. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court eventually agreed. The legal fight over Naked Lunch helped establish that literary merit had to be weighed before a court could label something obscene. The book did not become easier to read, but it helped determine what American literature was legally permitted to be. 120 Days of Sodom. The Marquis de Sade wrote this manuscript on a 12-meter scroll of paper while imprisoned in the Bastille. It describes, in systematic and escalating detail, acts of sexual violence and cruelty carried out by 4 wealthy libertines. It is not metaphorical. De Sade was cataloging transgression as completely as he could. When the Bastille was stormed in 1789, he believed the scroll had been destroyed and reportedly wept. It had survived. De Sade was imprisoned multiple times. By royal order, by revolutionary tribunals, and finally by Napoleon, who had him confined without trial in an asylum. He died there in 1814. The book remained banned or restricted across most of the world for more than a century after its eventual publication. His legacy extends far beyond any single text. The word sadism, pleasure derived from cruelty, comes directly from his name. He did not just write a book, he became a definition. Animal Farm, George Orwell's short fable, follows farm animals who overthrow their human owner and attempt to govern themselves. Over time, the pigs seize control, rewrite the founding principles, and become indistinguishable from what they replaced. Orwell wrote it as a clear allegory for the Soviet Union under Stalin. He finished it in 1943, when Britain and the USSR were wartime allies. Multiple publishers refused it, not by government order, but out of voluntary political caution. When published, it was banned across Soviet-controlled territories. Other governments challenged it for different reasons, interpreting it through their own political anxieties. The most telling aspect of the book's banning history is its consistency. Every authoritarian system that encountered it recognized the pattern. A fable about power replacing principle was dangerous precisely because it described something true, simple enough for anyone to follow, impossible to dismiss. 1984. Orwell's final novel imagines a totalitarian state where citizens are surveilled constantly. History is rewritten to serve the present. Language is systematically reduced to prevent complex thought, and even private dissent, thought crime, is a punishable offense. Orwell based the book on Stalinist politics, Nazi Germany, and wartime propaganda. He did not intend it as science fiction. He intended it as a warning about things he could already see develop. The Soviet Union banned it as anti-communist propaganda. It was challenged in American schools, sometimes accused, paradoxically, of promoting communism. Authoritarian states throughout the Cold War suppressed it where they could. What made it enduringly threatening was that it named techniques. It gave people vocabulary, doublethink, memory hole, big brother, thought crime, to describe methods of control they were already experiencing. Authoritarian governments found it dangerous not because it invented a new nightmare, but because it described theirs. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll's beloved children's fantasy, follows a girl who falls into a surreal world of talking animals, shifting logic, and eccentric characters. It was written by a mathematics lecturer at Oxford as a story told to a real child. It is among the most cherished books in the English language. It was also banned. In 1931, a Chinese official in Hunan province banned it from schools on the grounds that depicting animals reasoning at the same level as humans was degrading to human beings. The ban was enforced locally. In the United States, the psychedelic culture of the 1960s retrospectively attached drug imagery to Carroll's mushrooms and hookah-smoking caterpillar, images written nearly a century earlier. Some school boards found the association troubling enough to challenge the book. Carroll was playing with mathematics and logic, not encoding subversive messages. The censors found danger in a children's fantasy that most readers found simply charming.
Brave New World. Aldous Huxley imagined a future world where humans are manufactured in laboratories, conditioned into social castes, and kept permanently content through pleasure, entertainment, and a pacifying drug called soma. There are no families, no religion, no genuine history. Nobody suffers, nobody questions, nobody is free. The book was challenged repeatedly, not for depicting an evil regime, but for its content within that world. Critics objected to its sexual permissiveness, its dismissal of religious belief, and its apparent hostility to family structure. Ireland restricted it. Schools removed it from curricula. What makes the book permanently unsettling is its method of control. Citizens are not oppressed by pain. They are managed by pleasure. Huxley believed this was the more likely danger. Not that governments would force people into submission, but that people would choose comfortable captivity over difficult freedom. That idea has never stopped being relevant.
Tropic of Cancer. Henry Miller's semi-autobiographical novel follows a version of himself living in Paris in the late 1920s. Written in language that was crude, sexually explicit, boastful, and deliberately anti-literary. Olympia Press published it in Paris in 1934. The United States banned its importation immediately. For nearly 30 years, copies were technically contraband. When Grove Press published an American edition in 1961, over 60 separate obscenity cases were filed across the country. Booksellers were arrested. Courts in different jurisdictions contradicted each other. The Supreme Court ruled in 1964 that the book was not obscene. The decision helped establish that literary intent and social value had to be considered before a court could prosecute a text purely for its content. Miller's novel was not elegant. Many readers found it repellent, but the legal fight over it helped define what American literature was legally permitted to say. The Jungle. Upton Sinclair spent weeks undercover in Chicago's meatpacking district, documenting the conditions inside slaughterhouses and the lives of immigrant workers ground down by industrial exploitation. He published his findings as a novel, intending to generate outrage about labor conditions. Readers reacted, but not the way Sinclair expected. Americans focused less on worker exploitation than on the book's descriptions of contaminated meat, dangerous processing, and industrial filth entering the food supply. The public outcry over what they were eating triggered rapid legislative response. Within months, Congress passed the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Federal Meat Inspection Act of 1906. Sinclair later said he had aimed for the public's heart and hit its stomach instead. Some European regimes banned or burned it for its socialist politics. American authorities left it alone, having already absorbed its most politically manageable implications while quietly setting aside the labor radicalism at its core.